Let's be real. Most people don't actually think. They react, they repeat, they follow, but they don't sit down and wrestle with their own thoughts. And the scary part? They don't even realize it. I mean, look around. How many people just go with the flow, never questioning why they believe what they believe? They follow trends. They take in opinions from the news, from social media, from their friends, and they just adopt them. No filter, no real examination. It's like they're outsourcing their thinking. But here's the thing. If you don't think for yourself, someone else will do it for you. And that's not always a good thing. Let me tell you a story. A while back, I met this guy who had spent years climbing the corporate ladder. He had the job, the car, the lifestyle, everything that was supposed to mean success. But one day he told me something that stuck with me. He said, "I don't even know if I wanted any of this. I just did what I thought I was supposed to do." And that hit me hard. Because how many of us are living lives based on scripts we never wrote? Think about it. How many of your choices, your career, your beliefs, your habits are actually yours? And how many are just things you absorb without even realizing it? Now, I'm not saying you need to throw everything out and start from scratch. But what I am saying is that if you don't start questioning, you're going to wake up one day realizing that you spent your whole life playing someone else's game. So let's start there. Right now, just ask yourself, what do I believe that I've never actually questioned? What do I do just because it's normal, not because I've thought it through? Whose approval am I chasing without even realizing it? This isn't about rebelling for the sake of rebelling. It's about ownership, about making sure that when you think, when you act, when you decide, you're doing it because you chose to, not because you were programmed to. Because if you don't own your mind, someone else will. And trust me, there's no shortage of people, companies, and systems ready to do the thinking for you. You know what's crazy? Most people go through their entire lives without ever realizing that their thoughts aren't really theirs. Think about it. How many of your beliefs, opinions, and even fears did you actually choose? And how many just kind of showed up because you were raised a certain way, surrounded by certain people, fed certain ideas? I'm telling you, man, if you want to think for yourself, the first thing you have to do is clear out the noise, because there's a hell of a lot of it. We're surrounded by opinions all day long. Social media, the news, your friends, your family. Everyone has a take, and most of the time, it's loud. And if you're not careful, you just absorb all of it without questioning. You think you're forming your own thoughts, but really you're just echoing what's been planted in your head. I had to learn this the hard way. I used to think I had my own mind, but when I really started paying attention, I realized half of what I believed wasn't even mine. It was just a mix of things I'd picked up along the way. And the scariest part? I never stopped to ask, do I actually believe this? So how do you fix that? First, you have to start recognizing when your thoughts aren't really yours. And the best way to do that? Question everything. Next time you catch yourself stating an opinion, whether it's about politics, success, relationships, whatever, pause for a second and ask, where did I get this idea? Did I actually think this through? Or did I just hear it so many times that I accepted it? That alone will shake you, because suddenly you'll start seeing how much of your thinking is just recycled from somewhere else. The second thing, you have to create space for your own thoughts. And that's not easy in a world where we drown ourselves in noise. Think about it. When was the last time you just sat in silence? No music, no scrolling, no podcasts, no distractions. Just you with your own mind. Most people never do that. And it's not because they don't have time. It's because silence makes them uncomfortable. When you take away all the distractions, you're left with nothing but your thoughts. And sometimes those thoughts aren't pretty. But listen, if you don't give your mind space to breathe, you'll never hear your own voice. You'll just keep replaying the voices of everyone else. So try this. Take 10 minutes, just 10, and sit in silence. No phone, no background noise. Just observe what comes up. You might be surprised by what you find. And the last thing, be picky about what you let into your mind. Because here's the truth. What you consume consumes you. If you only surround yourself with people who think the same way as you, you'll never grow. If you only read things that confirm what you already believe, you're not learning. You're reinforcing a bubble. And if you spend all your time on shallow, mindless content, guess what? Your thinking is going to be shallow and mindless too. So be intentional about what you feed your brain. Seek out perspectives that challenge you. Read things that make you uncomfortable. Talk to people who see the world differently, not to argue, to understand. Because that's how you start thinking for yourself. You strip away the noise, you sit with your own thoughts, and you challenge what you've always assumed to be true. And once you start doing that, there's no going back. All right, so now that we've started questioning what we believe, let's talk about something sneaky, something that messes with your ability to think clearly without you even noticing. Mental shortcuts. Your brain loves shortcuts. It's wired that way. It wants to save energy, make fast decisions, and move on. And most of the time, that's useful. You don't want to analyze every single choice. Nobody has time for that. But here's the problem. Shortcuts can trap you. Ever heard of confirmation bias? It's that thing where you only pay attention to information that supports what you already believe. It feels good. It makes you feel right. But it also keeps you from seeing the full picture. Or what about the bandwagon effect, where you assume something must be true just because a lot of people believe it? Happens all the time. Trends, popular opinions, political movements. People follow the crowd because it's easier than thinking for themselves. And then there's black and white thinking, where you see things as either completely good or completely bad, with no middle ground. This one is dangerous because the world is rarely that simple. So how do you break free from these mental traps? 1. Get comfortable being wrong. Most people avoid questioning their beliefs because deep down, they're scared of what they might find. If you've spent years believing something, admitting you were wrong feels uncomfortable, like losing a piece of yourself. But here's the thing, being wrong is how you grow, so start embracing it. When you hear something that challenges your beliefs, don't shut it down immediately. Instead, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? What would it mean? What would I do differently? That one question alone will put you miles ahead of most people. 2. Play devil's advocate with yourself. Next time you have a strong opinion about something, try arguing against it. Force yourself to take the opposite position, even if you don't agree with it. If you think social media is ruining people, argue why it's actually a good thing. If you believe money doesn't buy happiness, make a case for why it does. If you think someone is completely wrong, try to see how they might be right. This isn't about changing your mind. It's about sharpening it. When you push yourself to see both sides, you stop falling for lazy, one-sided thinking. 3. Slow down your thinking. Most mistakes in thinking happen because we're in a rush. We hear something, we react, we move on, without stopping to really process it. But smart thinkers, they pause. Next time you catch yourself instantly agreeing or disagreeing with something, take a breath. Give yourself a few seconds to ask, why do I feel this way about this? Am I reacting emotionally or logically? Is there a perspective I haven't considered? That tiny pause can be the difference between blindly following a thought and actually thinking it through. 4. Surround yourself with thinkers, not echo chambers. If you only hang around people who agree with you, your thinking is going to get lazy. It feels good to be in an environment where everyone nods along with your ideas, but it also keeps you stuck. So challenge yourself. Talk to people who think differently. Read books by authors you disagree with. Engage with ideas that make you uncomfortable. Not to argue, not to attack, just to understand. Because the goal here isn't to win debates, it's to develop a mind that's strong enough to question, adapt, and evolve. And once you start doing that, you become damn near unstoppable. All right, let's get into something that messes with everyone, even the smartest people you know. You ever make a decision that felt so right in the moment, only to look back and think, what the hell was I doing? Yeah, we all have. That's because your brain is constantly in a tug-of-war between emotion and logic. And if you're not aware of it, you're going to let emotions drive without even realizing it. Let me tell you a quick story. I had a friend, smart guy, ambitious, always had big plans. But every time something felt unfair, he'd explode. Didn't matter if it was a boss, a relationship, a random argument, his emotions took over. And every time, he'd end up making things worse. One day after losing a job over a dumb argument, he told me, "I wasn't even thinking, I was just reacting." And that's exactly the problem. When emotions take over, thinking stops. Now don't get me wrong, emotions aren't the enemy. You need them. They give your life meaning. But if you let them make all your decisions, you're in trouble. So how do you balance them? How do you feel deeply but still think clearly? 1. Recognize. When you're in emotional mode, the first step, just notice it. You ever been in an argument where halfway through you know you're wrong but you keep fighting anyway? That's emotions running the show. Or ever make a huge purchase because it felt right, only to regret it later? Same thing. The trick is to catch yourself in the moment. Whenever you feel yourself reacting instantly, anger, excitement, fear, pause, just pause. Ask yourself, am I thinking or just reacting? If I wasn't feeling this way, would I still make the same decision? What would my calm, logical self say about this? That pause alone can save you from so many dumb mistakes. 2. Create a 24-hour rule for big decisions. Ever notice how things feel way different after a good night's sleep? That's because emotions are temporary, but decisions, they last. So whenever you're about to make a decision based purely on emotion, sending a risky text, quitting a job, making a big purchase, wait, just 24 hours. Chances are when you wake up the next day, you'll either still think it's a great idea, which means it probably is, or realize, holy crap, I almost made a huge mistake. Either way, you win. 3. Use logic to talk down your emotions. One trick I use, I argue with my emotions like a lawyer. Let's say I feel like I'm failing. My emotions scream, "You're not good enough. You'll never make it." Instead of letting that take over, I go full defense attorney. Where's the evidence? Am I actually failing or am I just impatient? Would I say this to a friend? If not, why say it to myself? What's another way to see this? Maybe I'm struggling, but that doesn't mean I won't figure it out. When you challenge your emotions like this, they lose their grip. You stop letting them dictate reality. 4. Know when to trust emotion over logic. Now, I know I've been saying, think before you act. But sometimes, logic isn't enough. There are moments where you feel something before you can explain it. That gut feeling that tells you a person is lying. That pull toward an opportunity that doesn't make sense on paper but just feels right. That instant discomfort around someone who seems off. That's your intuition. And while it's not always correct, it's built on a lifetime of experience that your logical brain might not even be aware of yet. So here's the rule. Use logic for long-term decisions. Trust emotion for instincts. A good thinker knows when to slow down and analyze. A great thinker knows when to listen to that deep, unexplainable feeling inside. The trick is knowing which moment calls for which. And once you master that, you start making killer decisions. Decisions that actually move your life forward. All right, my friend, let's get into something that will change the way you think forever. The power of asking the right questions. If you've ever felt stuck in life, like you're running in circles, frustrated with no real answers, chances are you've been asking the wrong questions. See, most people don't realize this, but your brain is a problem-solving machine. Whatever question you feed it, it will work overtime trying to find an answer. But here's the thing. Garbage questions get garbage answers. Ever notice when you ask yourself things like, why does this always happen to me? Why am I such a failure? What's wrong with me? Your brain immediately serves up an answer. Because you're unlucky. Because you're not good enough. Because you always mess things up. And just like that, you've trapped yourself in a loop of self-doubt. But what if you flipped it? What if you trained your brain to ask better questions? Questions that pull you forward instead of dragging you down? Let's talk about how to do that. First, shift from why to how. One of the worst thinking traps is getting stuck in why mode. Why am I not successful yet? Why do I always feel stuck? Why can't I figure this out? These questions do nothing but feed your frustration. Instead, start asking, how? How can I improve? How can I get better at this? How can I turn this around? See the difference? One keeps you feeling powerless, the other forces your brain to find solutions. Smart thinkers don't waste time complaining. They redirect their thinking toward action. 2. Ask yourself, what's the real problem? Most people think they know what their problem is, but often, they're totally focused on the wrong thing. Let's say someone tells me, I just don't have enough motivation. But if we dig deeper, what's really going on? Are they actually lacking motivation, or do they just not have a clear goal? Are they just afraid of failing? Are they overwhelmed because they don't know where to start? See, motivation isn't the problem. The problem is they don't have clarity. So next time you feel stuck, ask yourself, am I focusing on the surface problem or the real problem? If someone else had this problem, what advice would I give them? What's the simplest step I can take right now? Sometimes the answer isn't as complicated as you think. You just have to ask the right question to see it. 3. Flip negative thoughts into problem solving. Questions. Let's say you catch yourself thinking something like, I'll never figure this out. Before you accept that thought as truth, flip it into a question. What part of this can I figure out right now? Who could I learn from? What small step can I take today? This one shift is huge because the moment your brain stops seeing something as a dead end, it starts finding ways around it. All right, my friend, let's talk about something that scares the hell out of most people: uncertainty. Think about it. What keeps people stuck? What makes them hesitate, doubt themselves, or feel completely lost? It's not knowing what's going to happen next. Should I take this job or not? Should I move to another city? What if I make the wrong choice? That fear of the unknown can be paralyzing. But here's the truth: uncertainty is a permanent part of life. You can either let it control you, or you can train yourself to handle it like a pro. Let's figure this out together. 1. The illusion of control. Most people think they need certainty to feel secure. They want guarantees. They want a perfect plan. They want to know for sure that things will work out. But let me tell you something. It doesn't exist. No one really knows what's coming next. Not you, not me, not even the smartest people in the world. And that's actually a good thing, because when you stop chasing certainty, you free yourself. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting for the perfect moment, and you start living. 2. Clarity comes from action, not overthinking. Let's say you're stuck in a decision. Should you take the leap or play it safe? Most people sit there thinking and thinking and thinking, hoping the answer will magically appear. But here's the secret. You don't figure things out by thinking. You figure them out by doing. You don't know if you'll like a job until you start working. You don't know if a relationship will last until you invest in it. You don't know if your idea is good until you test it. So instead of wasting weeks or years waiting for certainty, just take a small step forward. That's how clarity works. You move, you learn, you adjust. 3. Reframe fear as curiosity. When people face the unknown, they usually react with fear. But what if you switch that fear to curiosity? Instead of, what if this goes wrong? Ask, what if this turns out even better than I imagined? Instead of, what if I fail? Ask, what could I learn from this experience? When you shift your mindset from fear to curiosity, uncertainty becomes exciting instead of terrifying. The 90-year-old test. Here's a trick I use whenever I'm stuck in uncertainty. I imagine myself at 90 years old, looking back at my life, and I ask, will I regret not taking this chance? Most of the time, the answer is yes. Because here's what's crazy. We rarely regret the things we try. We regret the things we were too scared to try. The risk of regret is always worse than the risk of failure. The reality of worst-case scenarios. A lot of people let uncertainty stop them because they imagine the worst-case scenario. But let's be real for a second. Even if things go wrong, you'll survive. You might feel embarrassed. You might lose some money. You might have to start over. But will it destroy you? Most of the time, our worst fears are way bigger in our heads than in reality. So next time you feel paralyzed by uncertainty, ask yourself, what's the absolute worst that could happen? And could I handle that? 9 times out of 10, the answer is, yes, I can handle it. And I gotta be honest with you, if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most people. Seriously. Because most people, they don't think this deeply about their own thinking. They just go through life on autopilot, reacting instead of reflecting, believing instead of questioning, consuming instead of creating. But you're different. You're here because you want to take control of your own mind. And that's powerful. So let's bring it all together. Thinking for yourself isn't about being rebellious just for the sake of it. It's not about rejecting every idea or distrusting everything. It's about owning your mind, choosing your beliefs, shaping your worldview, and standing firm in what you know to be true while still being open to growth. It's about having the courage to challenge yourself, to say, maybe I'm wrong, to ask, what if the opposite is true? To step outside your own biases and see things from a fresh perspective. It's about listening more than you speak, but thinking more than you listen. And above all, it's about living a life that is truly yours. Because when you stop thinking for yourself, you stop being yourself. You become a reflection of whatever influences you the most: social media, news, friends, family, culture. And while all of those things can offer value, none of them should have the final say on who you are. That's your job. Now let's get practical, because deep thinking is great, but action is what changes your life. So here's my challenge to you. 1. Pick one belief you've held for years and question it. Where did it come from? Is it actually true? 2. Go a full day without checking social media or the news. Pay attention to how it affects your thinking. 3. Have a conversation with someone who completely disagrees with you, not to argue, just to listen and understand. These 3 things alone, they'll sharpen your mind more than most people ever experience in a lifetime. And listen, I'm not saying this is easy. It's not. Thinking for yourself can feel lonely sometimes. When you stop going with the crowd, people will notice. Some might challenge you. Some might even try to pull you back in. But that's the price of freedom. And honestly, it's worth it. Because once you truly learn to think for yourself, you become unstoppable. You become the kind of person who shapes the world instead of just living in it. And that's a life worth living. So my friend, that's it. That's the end of our talk. But really, it's just the beginning. Because from this moment on, you're in control. Now go out there, challenge your own thinking, and own your damn mind. You've got this.